We are in the process of going through this whole big step as a church family in this multi-site issue. And a few weeks before Easter, we were just kind of explaining the whys and the what is it and some of the practical considerations. But we said after Easter, we were going to launch it to the real fun questions and like where. And in fact, that's the one we want to tackle tonight, right? That's right. All right. I know some of this stuff has already leaked. It's not like it's top secret or anything. But I was wondering if we could become somewhat official tonight in announcing where we were looking at and some of the reasoning behind it. There you go.
Thank you. I would love to be able to do that. And as we come into talking about where it is that we sense we're going to move together as a church family, I'd like to give you just a little reasoning. Obviously, this is a very, very important step for us as a church. We've prayed much about this. We started back in November as a leadership team specifically praying about this. We met together 4 weeks ago as leadership, spent a whole Saturday morning praying and discussing and praying some more. God, we want to be sure of your leading in this. And before I give that direction in terms of where we're going, let me just bring you some of the reasoning behind all of this. If I could have the slides, there we go. If you look up at this, you'll see a map of our area, and you see highlighted in there the Sandusky Huron area. Many of you are aware that this church, the founding area for this church, was in Huron. That's where we started. Moved to Sandusky and now into this part of town, but still within that area. And a good majority of the people who have come over 25 years to the chapel have come from this area together. And if you look at the boundaries of that circle, that takes us about 15 to 20 minutes, which, as we're learning, is that area of most likely people coming to Christ, growing in their faith, becoming involved in the church, and that definitely is true for us as a church. Most of the people have come from that area, reaching out to Castalia and some parts of Milan and the area around. So now if we're going to do what we talked about, which is moving a little further out, moving out 25 or 30 minutes away, where does that take us? In reality, we can only go one of three directions. One direction is somewhat limited as we head towards Canada in terms of what we might be able to do out there. Some kind of a fishing ministry or something, but somewhat limited. So if we move to the west area, of course, immediately we're looking at Port Clinton, Marblehead, Lakeside, even touching out towards Oak Harbor and so on. That is definitely one area that we can move towards. Or we can move south. And we begin to look at areas like Norwalk and Monroeville and Bellevue and other parts of Milan and so on, Berlin Heights. And you can see where we head in that direction. And then, of course, we can move east, looking at Vermilion, Amherst. That takes us about 30 minutes out in that direction. And you are well aware of the communities within these various areas. So as we began to pray and talk together, we said, which way do we go? Part of what we mentioned to you as a church was that in moving, we're simply not moving into a new area. We're going where chapel people already are and are coming and are involved in the church, but are finding it more and more difficult, even as fuel prices continue to rise and that kind of thing, finding it more difficult to come and to be engaged, to be involved here. And certainly for those people who would want to come and begin a relationship with Christ and join our church here, very difficult for them to feel the welcome to come this far. And so as we looked at that, we said, well, where do we look at going? To give a sense of where people come from the chapel, if you look at that first area, the founding area for the chapel, maybe we'd call it Chapel North, you'll see Sandusky, Huron, Castalia would be the major areas from which people are coming within that founding area. And over 4,000, almost 4,100 people. And here's where that number comes from. Not that 4,100 people are attending regularly, but 4,100 people. This would include several groups of people. This would include those who have over 25 years become a part of the chapel and are still here, are involved in what's happening at the church. Another group of people who would be included in that are people who have been a part of the chapel, but for various reasons have had to move. But have still left their name on the list because they love the connections they have here and have not taken their names off of our database and are still receiving information even though they have now moved further away because of family or job responsibilities, that kind of thing. And then a third group of people are those who visited, who, as it were, checked the chapel out, and are saying it's either too far to come, or maybe the style here is not what they were looking for, or they're not ready to make that kind of a commitment to a church. For various reasons, are not at that place yet. And just doing some mathematics and looking at this, we estimate that about 1 out of 3, about 1/3 of people who express interest, put their name on a database, come and visit us a couple of times, about 1 in 3 are left. Some have moved away, some are saying maybe at another time I'll come back, some are saying I put my name on the list but have decided not to make that kind of a commitment at this point. About 1 in 3 are vitally involved with what's going on at the chapel. That means of those almost 4,100, about 1,400 are vitally involved in ministries and small groups in weekend worship at the chapel in that process. Now if we look at Chapel South, and we look at Norwalk and Monroeville and Bellevue and Berlin Heights and all of those communities. You can see them all listed there. Isn't it amazing? There are about almost 2,200 on our database that come from this area. Now, if you do the same mathematics there and take 1 out of 3, you're left with approximately 750 people are vitally involved in the chapel at some level from those areas. If we go west, we're approaching 400 names on our database, and probably about 130 to 150 of those are vitally involved in the chapel. And then, of course, we go east, Vermilion, Amherst, and so on. Another 350, probably about 125 of those are vitally involved. So as we as a church leadership really prayed about that, we said, well, it really would seem to make the most sense that the first direction we would go is where the largest group of people already are. And so with that in mind, we as chapel leadership have said we are going to move south first and move into that south area that we've been talking about, Norwalk, Monroeville, Bellevue, and that whole area, encouraging and helping those people that are in that area become engaged in the family and the family life of the chapel.
There you have it. I noticed when you were doing that presentation, Bill, that you were using Chapel South instead of tying one of those cities involved, like Norwalk or something along that line. What's the thinking behind that?
Very specifically, as we looked at that area, it is an area with many smaller communities that people are coming together. And so instead of just designating one town and saying that's where we're going, we want to go into an area. Now the likelihood is that we will pick something in a very strategic point, maybe to the south of Norwalk, and we already have a team that's together looking at possible places for us to go to, but it would be somewhere in that area that's accessible to the people from all of those communities to be able to come together. But we are going to call it Chapel South Campus. And so it's not going to be a specific community, but Chapel South Campus.
You know, I kind of like that just because the chapel is very regional. It goes into all these different directions. And if we place a city around it, it's almost like a barrier. And we're trying to build bridges, not barriers. And just to call it Chapel South, it allows them to be regional as well.
That's exactly right.
You know, this is exciting stuff. Next week, we're going to talk about when, the when question. And believe me, every time we do one of these, there's a lot of thought and a lot of prayer and a lot of effort that goes into this. And we would love to hear your comments, your thinking along this line as well. So please keep emails coming to reg@chapel-sandusky or bill@chapel-sandusky.org. And we'll kind of incorporate those and we'll get back to you when appropriate. But this is exciting. I cannot wait, okay, to do this together as a church family, to just kind of obey the next steps in God's leading.